live from TTT to give the nation an update as to the weather conditions and how it is affecting the nation. I am joined today by Minister Marvin Gonzalez, Minister of Public Utilities, Minister Faris Al-Rawi, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, Minister Rohan Sinanan, the Minister of Works and Transport, and Minister Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of National Security. Let's go straight to Minister Al-Rawi, who will begin today. Faris.
Morning, Simon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for allowing us a slightly late start this morning. We were literally out on the field. Jacket put on just at least appear as if we are presenting ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, overnight, as you know, we've continued with the adverse weather. Minister Gonzalez will tell you in a little while about the Met Office position. I'll just give it in a snapshot. We have more weather occupying the positions right above us. They're stationary right now, so that means we're going to get more rainfall. And with more rainfall, we are in the reminder that we are in the riverine and national alerts. We're at orange level, and those levels stay there. Orange level means high danger. It means risk of serious flooding. It means risk of serious events. The positions are moved down to yellow when we begin to look better, but may move to red depending upon the severity and as we may be advised. And Minister Gonzalez will take you through those steps in a short while. The summary of events in the snapshot look like this. We've had 83 significant flooding events. Of course, that's not to say that we don't have flash flooding or receding flooding in smaller areas, but 83 significant events, 41 of which are in direct control, and the rest of them are being managed as we speak. Remember that whilst flooding is going on, whilst water is raging, sometimes you just have to mitigate or make it as best as good as you can while it is going on until the repairs can be done after. Landslips in total, and these are significant landslips, not that there aren't other landslips. We've had 137, 52 of them are in full repair. Fallen trees, 31, including those that were reported in this morning. These are significant road blocking events. 28 of them have been dealt with already, which means we have just a few that are ongoing as we speak. In terms of down power lines, Minister Gonzalez will talk to you a little bit more about that. Where roadways have had collapses or there have been landslides, the power lines have been affected. Those that we have dealt with immediately in terms of completion are about 5. There were many more. Again, Minister Gonzalez will tell you about that as the Ministry of Works and Transport and the Ministry of Public Utilities joined efforts to ensure that roadways were reopened and electricity was resupplied. We have had 4,740 sandbags right now out into the field. We want to remind that online you will see the centers available. Check the Ministry of Rural Development Local Government page, Ministry of Communications, TTT ticker tapes. We're sharing this information across the platforms. You can collect sandbags because you really ought to try and take as much self-help as you can right now. 49 mattresses distributed again up to last night, coverings 32, and so far we've evacuated 42 people in total. The Minister of National Security will tell you a little bit more about the work of the ODPM. They, together with the Engineering Battalion and the Coast Guard and the CERT officers from the disaster management units, are on the field engaged in reconnaissance and in moving people as best as they can. Quite a few people chose not to move, even though their neighbors were being moved. So we're reminding that you still have that option. Call your first responders, fire, TTPS, ambulance services, disaster management units, and we will then assist. So we have 11 out of 14 corporations really with significant events. That would be the Cuva Talparo Corporation, and I'm abbreviating here, the Sawa Laventil Corporation, the Mayaro Rio Claro Corporation, the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation, the Sangre Grande Regional Corporation, the Diego Martin Regional Corporation, Princestown Regional Corporation, San Fernando Regional Corporation, City Corporation, Chaguanas Borough Corporation, the Princestown Corporation again, and the PDRC, the Pinal Debe Regional Corporation. We have, as you are aware, high tide and low tide in factor. So high tide was at 8:05 a.m. High tide is currently receding. The tide is falling. Low tide will be at 1:21 p.m. Whilst the low tide is there, you'll note that we're still having showers, so the water is being replaced, and there's a significant amount of surface water. That affects us in a number of areas. Soil becomes very heavy. The risk of continued landslip, which Minister Sinanan will speak to, will continue, and Minister Gonzalez will tell you how that affects our water supply as we treat with it together. In terms of overnight, new information post that which we gave yesterday at 6:30. Carney Bamboo Settlement number 2 currently has anywhere between 2 to 4 feet of water due to the burst riverbanks. Major landslips in Aripo, damage to major Wassa main there. Over 2,000 sandbags distributed this morning. Major flooding in several areas within Carney. The Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation, Minister Sinanan will speak to this in detail. Blanchisseuse Road, complete assessment done between 16 to 22 mile mark, with 7 major landslides reported to us, 6 small with fallen trees, 17 other landslips. We've deployed assets from corporations that are not heavily affected to other other corporations, and the ministry has also asked for volunteer assistance. We have 3 community centers, activated shelters right now. We have the Mayaro Rio Claro Regional Corporation, the Plumita Community Center. We have 10 people located there right now. At the Sawa Laventille Regional Corporation, we have the Mizir Community Center with 2 families located there. And in the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation, Vishnu Boys College, that shelter is right now closed but is available on standby. We have Upper El Dorado Community Center that is open, and the Tunapuna Community Center that is open. We will publish in a short while the individual corporation incident report, which will show you exactly what has happened and where. And that's for the 11 of the 14 corporations significantly affected. We can also now let you know the river conditions. Again, the tide is falling. The current major rivers to look at in the Sawa Laventille Regional Corporation, Sawa River is at 40%. Carney Bamboo number 1 is at 90%. It has gone from 100% down to 90% and may very well go back up. PDRC, that's the Penal Debe Regional Corporation. We've averaged, because all of those connected rivers and riverines are in effect, and they're about, on average, 60% full. In Sangre Grande Regional Corporation, the North Oropouche River is now down to 85%. The Kunapo River is at 85%. In our sensor levels, we have a number of rivers where we have active sensors. I can report to Aripo River, that's between Tunapuna Piarco and Sangre Grande Regional Corporations. It's at, fortunately, 25%. Aruca, 38%. Caparo River is at 71%. Carney River is at 83%. El Carmen is at 100% and over. North Oropouche River is at 85%. What does this all mean? We've seen multiple breaches in the low-lying areas with the high and low tide effect and the consistent rain. That's now Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We've had 5 days of significant weather in a type of system which really looks like drizzle at times or heavier showers. But what has happened is that it has just not turned off. So for this month of November, we've noticed that we are perhaps now at 190% of what the average rainfall looks like on a 30-year average in Trinidad, and we're over 100% in Tobago. So please, ladies and gentlemen, even though you may see a break in the rain or it appears to only be a drizzle, the important point is that the river and riverine situation is such that they are full and they're at capacity. When they breach, you're going to have to go into the low-lying areas. So that's Bamboo number 3. That's South Valsine. That crawls up to North Valsine. That's the Oropouche Lagoon. That's Pluck Road. That's Penal Debe. So all of the usual areas, when Minister Sinanan informs you about the Nariva Swamp and you get down to Manzanilla, Mayaro, we're looking at swamp waters over 7 feet high. So there's a vast amount of water in the position. I'll end by saying this. The mission right now is to ensure that we don't have loss of lives, that we mitigate or make better the situation with what we can. Secondly, we are shoring up embankments wherever we can with clay soil, wherever there have been breaches, etc. We're on the field in those areas. We're in reconnaissance, search and rescue, bring people out, etc. As the rains peter off, and God willing we get to drier days, we are on immense cleanup activities. That means all of the regional corporations, all of CPEP, all of the ancillary services, the washing services by fire, by WASA, etc. Those things will come in. So for now, we need to make sure that we maintain lives and livelihoods as best as we can. We take as much self-help as is possible. Please look onto our website, look onto the pages, pay attention to ticker tapes and the media outlet information as to where you can make your reports so that we can actually get to you. Remember, frontline, first-line responders will be police, municipal police, fire services, ambulance services, fire services. You all know those emergency numbers. They then connect with us, and we are also available at the disaster management end. Our numbers are out in circulation. Ladies and gentlemen, I pass you back over to Minister of Communications as my colleagues continue the report.
Thank you very much, Minister Al-Rawi. Let's move on to Minister Sinanan now, who will give us an update from the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Minister. As Minister Al-Rawi would have indicated and given the figures, there is really a challenge on the outside with the volume of water that is still on the land. From the ministry perspective, we have been in continuous mode of actually ensuring that the connectivity remains. As we speak, we have cleared all the way now to Matlot on the last landslip there to ensure that vehicles can actually traverse the road. However, I still urge that if you don't have to be on the road in these areas, it is much safer not to go on the road. We have had a lot of culvert failures and landslips on the road network itself. So we are mobilizing today to start the repairs, especially in the areas where there's no additional access road, to ensure that connectivity remains. There are challenges on the normal roads like the North Coast Road, the Paria Main Road, the Blantyshires roads. However, all these roads except, I think, at the Las Cuevas area, there is a culvert failure there where we have closed the road. We have reopened the Lady Young Road last night. However, we will be closing that road tonight again to continue with the cleaning of the landslip. If you're proceeding along the Lady Young Road, we ask that you proceed with caution because the slips are real, they are active. We have equipment up there, but at any point in time, we can expect landslips. Once that happens, we will have to close the road again to make sure that the road is safe. In the Chagaramas area, we have had 2 landslips this morning. What it means is that the landslips are still coming down in different areas. If you have any area where there are landslips happening, or just please get in touch with the numbers that Mr. Al-Rawi said. We'll immediately send teams to assess to ensure that it is actually safe in those areas. In terms of the flooding, there isn't much that can be done now because most of the flooding is taking place in the very low-lying areas. In the Mayaro area, that area is challenged because it is surrounded by the Ottawa River, the Atlantic Ocean there, and the swamps. A lot of water is now heading down into that area, and we expect that area to get a little worse before it starts to get better. So if we could avoid going into these areas unnecessary, it is really it is in your interest to do so. We do have connectivity into the Mayaro area. It is not cut off. We were there up to last night ensuring that all the roads are structurally intact. However, there is some flooding in that area. In terms of the Caroni, we did close some roads last night. They were reopened this morning. However, there is a lot of flooding in those areas. Most of the areas where we have flooding now are the low-lying areas where flooding will definitely take place. And until and unless the rivers recede to some extent, these areas will continue to maintain that water level. So we urge people from the ministry's point of view to please do not go through flood waters at this stage. And if you can avoid the areas that are prone to landslips, please do so. We have teams throughout the country, and we will continue to work until we get back some level of normalcy. And as I said before, let's all be our brothers' keepers at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Sinanan. Minister Gonzalez, let's move to you to give an update from Public Utilities.
Thank you very much, Minister Dino Brigger. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning to my other cabinet colleagues at this table. I wish to report that the Meteorological Services Division of the Ministry of Public Utilities continue to monitor this situation and to provide the people of Trinidad and Tobago with up-to-date news bulletin so that we can prepare and take the necessary precaution, not only at the level of government, but that citizens will understand the various threats that might be out there so that we can take appropriate action to protect ourselves, protect our families, protect our properties. Currently, the Met Office has advised that there exists a trough of low pressure near 10,000 feet above Trinidad, which has become stationary and is creating the right conditions for persistent rainfall. It is expected that conditions will be improved later on tonight into tomorrow. And we are still at an orange level, both in terms of our riverine alert as well as our adverse weather conditions. So we're asking all citizens to take the necessary precaution because we are still at an orange level alert. The Met Office is advising that once conditions improve later on today into tomorrow, there exists the possibility of a downgrading from orange level to a yellow level. And of course, that is dependent upon whether current conditions improve as we progress later on today. We ask and we remind all citizens to pay close attention to all releases and bulletins from the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Meteorological Services Division as we seek to support all our state agencies and the people of Trinidad and Tobago with up-to-date news bulletin. With respect to the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, I'm pleased to advise that between yesterday's news conference and this morning, most areas in Trinidad and Tobago, TNTEC was able to restore the electricity supply where it was possible. In many cases, for example, in the Grand Riviere and Matlot area, TNTEC continues to be challenged as a result of road accessibility. We continue to work with our colleagues at the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Pure Highways Division in ensuring that the roads become passable, accessible, so that TNTEC crews can be fully mobilized to go into the community to restore electricity supply. As of now, in the Brasso Seco area, approximately 60% of the electricity supply has been restored, and we continue to work towards ensuring the full restoration of electricity supply over the next 3 hours or so. I am also advised by TNTEC that in Las Lomas number 1, as a result of flooded conditions, it is very impossible or very difficult for the Commission to go into Las Lomas number 1 to restore the electricity supply. However, crews continue to be mobilized. Supervisory teams are outside assessing the conditions, and once we have improved conditions, TNTEC crews will go into the community to restore the electricity supply. In Naber Road in Bamboo number 2, crews have been dispatched. We understand that there have been a disruption at 5 a.m. this morning. Crews have already been dispatched. In Al Paraso Estate in Guaracara, there was a disruption at 5:33 a.m. The crews have already been dispatched. And Covine Road in Diego Martin, distribution north area, at 5:26 a.m. there was a disruption, and the crews have been dispatched, and we expect over the next 2 to 3 hours in those areas that I just mentioned, there will be a full restoration of electricity supply. Again, let me remind citizens that in a number of cases, because of inaccessible roads, and because we are working and collaborating with the Ministry of Works and Transport, once those roads become accessible, TNTEC will go into the community and do the appropriate interventions to ensure that these communities receive their electricity supply. WASA is also experiencing some challenges with respect to the surface water plants in the northeast northwest and in Tobago. I'm happy to report, however, that in Tobago, all surface water plants have been restored, and citizens will see normalization of their water supply in Tobago. So WASA has done tremendous work in the Tobago area, and we expect over the next 24 to 36 hours, the water supply in some of the affected communities will be normalized. However, in Trinidad, 16 water treatment plants are still out of operation. That is because in northeast Trinidad, we continue to experience persistent rainfall. In one case, in the Guanapo area, WASA had to remove their equipment because of rising river levels. The Guanapo water treatment plant produces approximately 1 million gallons of water per day, and it feeds the Arima area, Calvary, Mount Pleasant, and what have you. So currently, Arima is out of water, and WASA continues to ensure that crews and equipment are deployed to undertake the necessary maintenance and the necessary restoration. But at this point in time, the river levels continue to be very, very turbid. It is rising, and we have to wait until conditions improve so that the necessary intervention and maintenance work can be done to restore the plant to full operation. In the Aripo area, because of a massive landslip, a 16-inch raw water transmission line was fully disrupted. And before I walked into this news conference, I saw crews going into some of the difficult, treacherous areas in the Aripo area to restore that 16-inch major transmission line. We expect that later on today, that line will be fully restored. The screens at the Aripo intake will be cleaned, and hopefully later on today into tomorrow, the Aripo water treatment plant, which feeds large areas in Arima and Santa Rosa and surrounding Wallerfield and surrounding communities, they are currently out of water. But because of the weather conditions and because of the challenges being faced by the crews, we expect to have a little delay, but hopefully tomorrow there will be full restoration of water supply. There are other areas in North Oropouche with reduced production levels. Luckily, the Oropouche water treatment plant is producing water, not at its optimal capacity, but at a low capacity, and some areas continue to have served by the North Oropouche water treatment plant with water. In Grand Riviere Sans Souci, we expect a fallen tree to be removed, and that TNTEC, once they restore electricity to the area, that plant in the Grand Riviere Sans Souci community will be returned to operation. Rincon, Tyrico, Las Cuevas, Lafayette, Blanchisseuse, St. Anne's, and to some extent in Marval with reduced production, we expect that once river levels return to normalcy, once the weather condition improves, that those plants can be restored to full operation over the next 24 hours. Let me assure the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that every piece of resource has been mobilized. WASA crews are outside assessing the turbid river levels, conducting the necessary tests to ensure that all of the affected plants can be returned to operation within the shortest time possible. Of course, nothing can be done if the river levels continue to be high, the water continues to be turbid, but we have already mobilized all our resources to ensure that those plants return to full operation as soon as it is possible. I also wish to advise that yesterday evening I was informed that the desal plant was going to be out of operation because of maintenance, and that would have resulted in over 40 million gallons of water not being available to the people of Central and South Trinidad. I immediately contacted the chairman of the Board of Commissioners of WASA to immediately get in contact with the management and the owners of the desal company to put an immediate halt on the maintenance program that was going to be put in place to ensure that the citizens of Central and South Trinidad can continue to have a water supply in order to engage in the appropriate and the necessary cleanup operation. I'm advised that upon my intervention and the intervention of the the chairman of the Board of Commissioners of WASA, DeSalcott, has taken the decision to immediately halt the planned maintenance and disruption of their facilities, and to continue to provide the 40 million gallons of water that they are contracted to supply to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and WASA. So I also asked that all planned maintenance on the desal plant be rescheduled until the situation in the country is normalized, and we will work with DeSalcott to agree on a planned maintenance program when it is appropriate to do so. But at this point in time, it is certainly not the time in which you can shut down a plant that produces 40 million gallons of water, thereby inconveniencing over 500,000 citizens. It's certainly not the time, and I will ask DeSalcott to take that into consideration. All in all, let me remind the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we continue to work with all our stakeholders at the Ministry of Rural Development, the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Works and Transport, WASA, TNTEC, SwimCall. We are all collaborating and mobilizing all our resources so as to mitigate and to reduce the inconvenience being experienced by all our citizens. The hard-working men and women of the Commission, as well as the authority, they continue to be outside, and we are ensuring that once it is safe to put all our plants back into operation, we will do so in order to reduce the level of inconvenience being experienced by our citizens. We ask citizens as well who do have a water supply to engage in conservation. We have to conserve because the weather patterns that we continue to experience, it is very unpredictable. And therefore, we ask all our citizens where it is possible to conserve their water because of the effects that we're having on our surface water treatment plant. Again, as Minister Al-Rawi would have reminded citizens yesterday, we have a robust rainwater harvesting program that we are putting in place, and we will, over the coming months, ramp up activities where rainwater harvesting is concerned, because that practice, it is something that is being, observed not only in the region but all over the world, because it does have an impact on the way in which our rainwater is impacting several communities around the country. So we will see a lot more on that in the coming weeks and the coming months, but we wish to ask all our citizens to collaborate, pay close attention to all our bulletins at the Meteorological Services Division, and to assure you that we are doing everything that is possible to reduce the level of inconvenience that we are all experiencing in some of the impacted communities around the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Gonzalez. Let us now move to Minister Hines, who will be giving us an update from the Ministry of National Security. Minister Hines.
Thank you very much, Minister Dino Brigger. Thank you, colleagues. Ours from the Ministry of National Security continue to be one of monitoring and providing support, and one of coordinating the various response teams in the kind of scenario that we are treating with in Trinidad and Tobago today. The ODPM yesterday, in that regard, coordinated and mobilized the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force for the Coast Guard and the Engineer Battalion to provide direct support to the Tunapuna-Piarco Regional Corporation yesterday in a number of water rescue operations, particularly in the Madras and St. Helena areas. In addition to that, the ODPM, out of the National Reserve stores, was able to provide some dinghies yesterday to those troops and others to carry out some of those responsibilities. The monitoring and the coordination, as I said, will continue in the Tunapuna-Piarco area and Couva-Tabaquite yesterday. Reconnaissance teams went out in the Orapun area, Piarco, Rail Spring, Valsain, and at the request of HDC, where they had developments that are generating some problems as a result of flooding, effectively assisting in rescue and removing people to safety, advising citizens, and most of all, to screen the area, to ensure making inquiries house to house in some cases, to ensure that there are no persons who are stranded and who are in need of support and did not or could not have made a request for it. So they are actually communicating with citizens in those communities and getting great support, I understand, from the public in this regard. In respect of the fire service, yesterday, roads in the Cali Bay area, in the area of the Cali Bay beach, became impassable, and the fire service had to carry out a rescue operation, the land, sea, and air response team actually, to rescue some 34 people and get them to some safety past the impassable roads that I made reference to a while ago. The ODPM, in its monitoring and reporting function, would have issued 4 hazard impact summary updates and a public advisory encouraging citizens of this republic in this experience to take action, as my colleagues have said repeatedly, to preserving their lives, the lives of others, and of course very valuable property, because we understand what loss is all about in these circumstances, even to property. And all of the reports and the advisories are usually sent, and yesterday and throughout this period will continue to be sent to the disaster management units of the various regional corporations, to the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, and of course to the fire service. And there are NGOs who are in the atmosphere serving remarkably well, and they are also the beneficiaries of these updates and these briefs. Insofar as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is concerned, in response to requests from the Minister of Works and Transport yesterday, and from your good self, Mr. Chairman, in your capacity as Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Central, we sent out teams to do some reconnaissance and monitoring in the Fort George area, particularly the station up there, to ensure that the roadways were nice and clear, to ensure that communication in the nation continues apace, and of course the police service monitoring it all from their respective command centers in the 10 police divisions, and managing the traffic flows and redirecting persons as is required in these circumstances, as happened yesterday on the Lady Young Road, and the police of the Port of Spain division, and of course the Northeastern Division rallied immediately at the request of the ODPM and of course the Minister of Works and Transport. So we continue to give the assurance that all the men and women of our respective agencies, all of our forces are on high alert, on standby, through the ODPM, continuing to monitor and evaluate the situation, and willing and able to provide resources in support of rescue and other efforts in this time of need. Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much, Minister Hines. Let us move quickly on to our question and answer section. We have quite a few members of the media present virtually, and as always, I see the hands are going up. Yes, please put up your hand. We will ask the person who is speaking to identify themselves and the media house. You will be allowed 2 initial questions, and then, of course, once time permits, we will come back to everyone. So let's begin. I believe the first hand that went up was Priya Bihari from AZP News. Priya, let's hear your question.
Good morning, everyone. Priya Bihari, azpnews.com. My first question has to do with agriculture. The crops, since we would lose some, is there any plans the government has in place to mitigate the increase in prices and the lack of supply? One. And my second question, maybe to Mr. Sinanan, anytime we have some rain, there seems to be flooding all over the country. Is there anything that can be done to solve this situation, or is it just that we have too much of water at one point in time? Thank you very much.
I'll answer the first question, just to say that the Honourable Prime Minister has been actively managing our team. And in fact, we had a full meeting this morning with the PM. It was a subcommittee meeting, and he chaired that meeting this morning. At that meeting, Minister of Agriculture, Kazim Hussein, who's part of this team but is not present at the table today, gave us an update on that. Just to remind that there is an assistance arrangement that the government engages in, and that assistance arrangement is access through the Ministry of Agriculture. For now, we are in an assessment position. As the waters recede, we'll know the position a lot clearer, but there are channels of assistance that are available. With respect to the second question, I know that's to Minister Sinanan, so I'll allow him to answer that.
Thank you, Minister. I don't know that statement is correct, that every time they have rain, there's flooding around the country. We do have two seasons in Trinidad, the rainy season and the dry season. And if you look at the history of flooding, at this time, the October, November, that's the height of the rainy season. The areas that normally will pond water are areas that you expect flooding. Unfortunately, we have taken up most of these low-lying areas and converted them into residential, commercial areas. And so what you find happening now, as the Minister of Local Government said, we have had almost, 100% more, 180% more rainfall. And it seemed to be happening like that every year. We keep getting more and more rainfall. At the end of the day, in the rainy season and the height of the rainy season, you will get this sort of flooding. It's not only happening here in Trinidad, it's happening around the world. This is a phenomenon that the world is trying to cope with. What we have been doing in Trinidad is trying to improve the infrastructure to plan for not only what is happening now, but what we can expect in the future. So there are plans to improve the infrastructure. Our infrastructure here is aged, and it catered for a certain amount of rainfall. Right now, we are exceeding that rainfall every year, and this year by 180%, from the figures from the Minister of Local Government. Any part of the world, the infrastructure with that increase in rainfall will be challenged. So it is not to say every time rain falls, it is flooding all over the country. There are certain areas. We have an issue in downtown Port of Spain, and that is because the infrastructure in downtown
very much supports its independence and positions. So Tobago speaks for Tobago, and they do so legislatively, and they springboard from Section 141 of the Constitution as well. That's why we can only speak to the areas that we have responsibility for. What I can do is to take your recommendation to ask for an update from Tobago, but Tobago consistently speaks for itself because they're physically on site with the reports. So I'll certainly ask the Chief Secretary if he's willing for us to speak for him. I certainly think that he may prefer to speak for himself because there's a definition of responsibility that the THA has for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cummins. In the generality, there will always be the need or the possibility of improvement, doing things better. We learn from all of our experiences accumulated over many years. And, of course, we keep an open mind and open ears to the public, who are the end users, the beneficiaries of all the service that we provide. And, of course, I'm in regular contact with the heads of all the divisions that I would have mentioned here this morning, including the head of the ODPM, and I have not had any reports of any circumstances along the lines that you have just suggested from an operational standpoint. All of the operations that I would have heard about yesterday appeared to have gone pretty smoothly. I have had no adverse reports in that regard. I just would take the opportunity to add, Minister Dino Brega, that I did mention a while ago that some NGOs and private citizens and organizations are throwing in their positive lot. Well, Price Club is providing a couple hundred meals to the people of, I think, the Orapun hot meals today in the circumstances in which they are put. Passad Food King, another big grocery chain, is providing, I think, about 700 of them. And a very small NGO that is becoming more vibrant in the national community is They're Not a Cause. They are at the forefront as well, You would be familiar with them, providing some meals to persons in the Orapun area and doing their little bit. So altogether, those are the kinds of reports I'm having. And again, I haven't had any reports of any adverse issues around our operations so far.
Thank you very much, Minister Hines. Let's move on to Jule Brown. Jule?
Good morning to everyone. First question to the Works Minister. You had identified a national drainage plan. I'm wondering if that would look at going forward the issue of communities that have, let's say, expanded in terms of housing, townhouse developments, be it on the hillsides, be it near rivers and so on. Because one of the things I wonder is if, for example, enough had been done to look at adding the drainage in areas where the actual communities had expanded in that regard. That's one. And secondly, to the National Security Minister, I'm just wondering, apart from the role of the fire service, if there's anything you can say in terms of the role of, let's say, the Defense Force over the past couple of days.
Okay, so Jude, if I could address your question in this way. The National National Drainage Plan takes into consideration the different, say like you have the Caroni Basin, the North Orapooch, the Nariva. So we are looking at this plan as a national plan, studying all the different areas and actually getting construction projects that can move the water, create bigger channels, create bigger areas where we can move the water from point A to point B. The National Drainage Plan will not take into consideration smaller development drains, and so those are more local government issues. Our main plan is to move this water once it gets into the major water courses, and so how we move them out. Yes, there's an element with town and country, with the local government authorities, and so to make sure that surface water, the localized surface water and the infrastructure for that is improved to a certain code and a certain standard. But the National Drainage Plan will focus on the different areas, like we are actually looking at the central area and how we can move that water from point A to point B. Looking at the Caroni area, even that whole Mayaro area. If you look at coming out of that plan, the people at the St. Augustine area who have been flooded out for year upon year, while in St. Augustine, that whole Caroni area. A part of that plan is how we deal with the Caroni River going forward, because that is the river that drains the entire east-west corridor. So this National Drainage Plan, it's an ongoing work in progress. I'm very comfortable that once we stick to this plan, because we are looking at the weather condition going forward, and as we go forward, we may have to change certain aspects of the plan. We have been doing studies in Trinidad we can go back for how much decades, and we have all these studies, but there's really no operational part of how do we make this thing work. That is what we are doing now, and we have actually started that. It's a work in progress. We are working with the Andean Development Bank on that. Recently, the Minister of Finance did get some financing to start the actual projects coming out of it. So, and it takes into consideration the entire country, how we deal with flooding going forward. And again, it is just not a plan that we are studying this and studying that. It is a program where we will actually get boots on the ground and see physical projects that will improve the drainage situation going forward.
The way the system is designed, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force is brought to bear when the corporations and the other agencies demonstrate an incapacity and inability. They are overwhelmed with the situation, and the ODPM provides the trigger for that and, of course, the resources to support that. To the extent that the engineer battalion doesn't have it, we go to the national stores. I did describe earlier in this press briefing some of the activities, the operational activities yesterday of the Defence Force who have been out there in the theatre of disaster, so-called, doing reconnaissance, doing some screening in troubled districts like Orapun, making contact with people to find out if there is any household, any persons like an elderly home yesterday needing their support, and those went on quite smoothly yesterday. So the Defence Force is very much involved, but so far to a very limited extent, and responding to the calls through the ODPM.
Thank you very much, Minister Sinanan. Let's move on to Kim Boudram now. Kim? I'm seeing Kim's hand down.
Good morning, Kim Boudram
Kim.
from the Express. Minister, can you hear me? Okay. Let me apologize in advance. Thank you. Let me apologize if I make any minister repeat himself, because the audio is low and the weather is really bad. Minister Al-Rawi, if you could just go back to the shelters, sorry, and how well stocked they are in terms of, just the food, the amenities, the drinking water, and so on. I know they must be well stocked, but the displacement has been large over the weekend, and also to ask if we may end up calling on the private sector in the aftermath for help to assist people with their losses, and that may also be with food, because the farmers have suffered tremendous losses as well across the country. No, you must have said the number of shelters, so I'm sorry to ask you to repeat that. And then my colleague, Jewel Brown, would have Defence Force.
Kim, you're breaking up. Let's get the first question answered, and then we can come back to you.
Thank you, Kim. We got question 1 to me. I think question 2 you interrupted. We heard the word Defence Force. I assume that's for Minister Hines. So let's just use the time to answer 1. Hopefully your connection gets better for question 2. So at question 1, yes, we have 3 regional corporations as at 10 a.m. the 28th of November in the Mayaro Rio Claro Regional Corporation. The Plum Mita Community Center has 10 people located in it. In Sawa Laventille Regional Corporation, the Mizir Community Center has 2 families located there. In the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation, we have the Upper El Dorado Community Center and the Tunapuna Community Shelter. They are active. Nobody's there just yet. We have a third which is on standby, which is only in the event of emergency. And that is Vishnu Boys College. Remember, there's a difficulty with schools being used as emergency centers. So this is in the event that the weather had taken us into red alert. Remember, we're in orange level alert. We have to anticipate the alternatives. Last night, we were actively preparing. I think Minister Sinan came back off the field into the wee hours of this morning, etc. We had to prepare what if we move into red level. So behind the scenes, we've been creating all of the preparations for red level. We're not there, thank the Lord God. What we can say is that the centers are appropriately fitted out with food and other structures. In fact, that occupied the Prime Minister's direct line of questioning today to make sure that we were in proper order. So we've gone back to make sure that people can be properly accommodated. Remember, from location into temporary shelters, into emergency centers, etc., we then have the Ministry of Social Development and the Ministry of Community Development. Those in terms of self-help, that's the latter one, and in terms of grant and even rental assistance for 3 months, etc., those ministries dial in, so our people are on the ground coordinating with those people that ask for relief. Your latter part of your observation or inquiry included whether the private sector would be involved. Minister Hines has just told you about the generosity of a number of people that have already stepped in for close to 1,000 lunches today. So, of course, being each other's keepers. I think one of the headlines in one of the newspapers today, front pages, was private and public sector methodology. It's all of us in this. Remember, we are in exceptional situation of climate change, rising sea levels, and effectively close to 200% more rain than we normally get in a consistent period. Now, I noted in the international press that there was a huge mudslide in Italy with loss of deaths, etc., in a resort island. We saw 3/4 of Pakistan go underwater, 3/4 of Pakistan, with hundreds of thousands of people swept away in their homes and their livelihoods, etc., just all gone. So not to say that there are outside causes that are to be ignored. They are there. Are we doing something about it? Summary version, Minister Sinanan has spoken to the surveys for engineering, increased capacity, getting water once their main tributaries managed. Minister Gonzalez is talking about water harvesting and management. Local government, we're talking about local government reform. And even though we're actually in court right now to stop local government reform, met with challenge by the opposition, we're still adamant that local government reform is critical. And I'll tell you why. Planning and facilitation development legislation comes to life in local government. And therefore, your drainage coordination with planning corporation in coordination with the local government on the ground factor, all of these things make a difference. Because if you don't have the coordination of all of government, you're not going to have the advances. Obviously, when we're not in a critical situation such as this, we will come to the public domain and have very significant public discussions and proposals, inviting public commentary and participation as well. So we'll come back to those studies. But for now, I think that's the best that I could do in terms of question 1. I think you want to ask question 2 over again because we didn't hear you, and I believe it is to Minister Hines.
Kim, you can go ahead with question 2.
Right, sorry. Thank you, Minister. Okay, so just quickly, just to address that particular concern again in the event of a blackout. So I'm sorry if I missed that, if it was addressed earlier. So another blackout for whatever reason prolonged, and if there would be, is there a heightened security response? Because last time there were concerns that the security response was not strong enough. That is based on public opinion that we would have seen. And if the Public Utilities Minister also wants to join Minister Hines and say if there's a delivery response for some amenities, potable water, etc. I imagine all the ministers would be involved in a response like that. Thank you.
Okay, yes, indeed. As I indicated in our first press briefing and earlier today, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is very much on the ball, on the button in respect of this, monitoring the situation, taking the lead from the ODPM as well, monitoring it real time in their various divisions from their respective command centers. And yes, on high alert, because I indicated on the first press briefing that we had, very much aware that there are persons in our national community who would want to capitalize on this disastrous state of affairs, who would want to, use their ill will and ill-minded energies to harm and hurt people in this kind of crisis. So the police service is very much on watch for that, and I give you the assurance, ready and able to deal with any such developments, night or day, blackout or otherwise.
Thank you very much, Minister Hines. Let's move on to...
Yes,
my apologies.
That's okay.
Minister Gonzalez.
Just to remind the national community that following the events of the blackout in February the 16th, earlier this year, the government had taken a decision to conduct a comprehensive assessment, putting together a team of professionals to look at the circumstances surrounding the blackout and the state's response to the blackout. The Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Public Utilities, TNTech, and all other relevant state agencies. The report was laid in Parliament, the findings and recommendations. All of these were laid before the Parliament and were passed to the requisite state agencies for implementation. I am pleased to say that TNTech has already started the process of implementing and has already implemented a number of recommendations, especially in the area of communication, in the area of who take the lead, coordination through the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management. So we are in a better place to manage crisis of this particular nature. And as for what is happening in our country at this point in time, I'm also pleased to advise that all of the requisite public utilities agencies, WASA, TNTEC, and SWIMCOL, they have activated their emergency response teams, and they have all been deployed trying to manage and, in fact, have been managing this very difficult situation. With respect to the supply of potable water to some of the affected communities, all WASA water trucks have been mobilized, and they are providing our schools, hospitals, and other public institutions with water so that we can have public services continuing. We are also providing a number of communities that have been impacted with portable water supply. We are working with the Ministry of Rural Development and the Regional Corporation in utilizing our water truck services where we do not have pipe-borne water, so that they can engage in the necessary cleanup operations. So yes, resources are stretched to an extent, but we are putting everything in place to ensure that we can return this country to a state of normalcy within the shortest time possible.
Thank you very much, Minister Gonzalez. Let's move on to Angelo Jedediah, I believe it is. Angelo?
Yes, good afternoon. So I'm a Guardian Media, Angelo Jedediah, and my first question is for the Minister of Works and Transport to comment on, well, during the past few days, there has been multiple reports that the cause of major flooding in certain areas has been a result of the pumps not being turned on, such as in Cashew Gardens and near Bamboo Number 2 this morning. What can you say to the situation? Like, are they continually updated? Are they checked continually? Are they refueled? Are they regularly fueled, etc.? And my second question is to either both Minister Al-Rawi and Sinanan, what are the priorities with regards to flood mitigation when the dry season begins?
And let me address this thing about the pumps. I have no report of pumps not working or pumps not turned on time or anything like that. Remember, the pumps in Trinidad and Tobago, once it's rainy season kicks in, these pumps are working all the time. They are manned all the time. They are manned not only by the drainage division, but the mechanical services division. I do not have any report of any area that pumps are not working. And you said about Bamboo 2, we have 3 pumps in Bamboo 2, 2 working. Remember, these are mechanical pumps. So yesterday they may have had an issue for about an hour where one of the pumps, we keep 2 pumps operating all the time. One of the pumps, because these pumps are going 7-8 days straight, they had to shut down one to change a belt. Within an hour, that one went back up and running. You had an additional pump operating. There's no area in Trinidad and Tobago where the pumps have failed or anything as such at this point in time. What you have is a vast amount of water on the land. All right? So at any part of the world with this sort of rainfall, 180% more, your infrastructure will be challenged. The pumps pump water from point A to point B, and if point B is filled, most of the water where we pump on these reservoirs into the Caroni River, have been at top level for almost the past 2 weeks. So the pumps are working. We have no problem with the pumps. Obviously, I mean, water is rising. People are hoping that, look, we have pumps who can pump this water out. But the volume of water that we have is so much. And the Caroni River is filled. We pump into the Caroni River. If the Caroni River is filled like that, then there's a limit as to how fast this water is going to go out. Remember, the water actually comes into the land in some cases, even through the Caroni at the low point, at El Carmen and so, because those areas are just naturally very, very low. That is why you see the Caroni at 100% in El Carmen, and at Bamboo and so it might be 80, 90%. It's just a natural phenomenon of how the hydraulics of water operates. But we have no problem with the pumps at this point in time.
Just to jump in on the second part of your question, when do we organize in dry season the mitigation positions? We actually plan that, all of us plan that in advance. So we planned that before the budget was presented, because that's where we ask for money, that's where we phase our works. It's called the PSIP, and then there's the development side of it. So that's the public sector investment program, and then the IDF, where we do development. In local government, we secured for all of the 14 corporations and head office approximately $400 million extra this year. Now, remember, we had a national conversation. There was a significant amount of difficulty that people experienced with the rise in the cost of fuel, for example, because we removed the subsidies in certain parts to fuel. What I can tell you is that $400 odd million represents nearly 70% of the money that we no longer put into filling gasoline in cars and other positions. So nearly 70% of that money has been given to the 14 regional corporations. So that's a redirection of public support, because the severity that we're managing is the improvement of infrastructure and management. So sometimes when we have understandably very passionate conversations about the effect on pockets, particularly in these tough times, high global prices, inflation because of the global environment. What we're trying to do is we're trying to balance the scales as best as we can. So that's a snippet into some of it. When do we start the mitigation management? We really started in the month of August gone. Take it into this year, anticipating the dry season. And it's a big, big part of local government reform. Ministry of Works and Transport will speak for itself. Public Utilities will speak for itself. But they are in no different a position. What they have behind that as well, significant surveys, for instance, with the IDB or the Andean Bank, where we get the money. Because it's one thing to engineer the solution. The next thing is, how are we going to pay for it? And remember, if we're going to pay for it, the money has to come from somewhere. And you get the money by way of a loan, but a loan has to be repaid, or you take it from your regular income, which is coming. And unfortunately, all of that reduces itself to the form in which a government raises money. The largest form in which a government raises money is called a tax. 3 very ugly letters when strung together that cause serious discomfort to everybody, us included. So to answer your question, there's a deep cyclical effect. What we need to do right now is to understand, and we take the challenge that we need to communicate the plan, and we will. Certainly at local government, you will be getting some very significant public interactions where we lay the cards face up on the table. We tell you what the actual plan is. We give you the menu. We tell you the cost. And then we have a real national discussion on how we get it done. But I want to show you that work is being done.
Thank you very much, Minister Al-Rawi. Let's move quickly to Jule Brown. Jule?
Yes, thanks again. Just 2 things. One, in terms of the issue of, I don't know if going forward, and I don't know how difficult this might be because of, just the challenge in terms of forecasting weather and so on. But in terms of evacuation of areas that may be prone to flooding in advance of any major flooding, is that something that is like a warning system of that nature? Is that something that will be looked at going forward? Secondly, I'm wondering also as well in terms of the acquisition of any amphibious type vehicles for the relevant essential services and also first responders in terms of rescues and so on. Is that something as well that is being looked at or has been looked at by the government?
I'll jump in really quickly. So in terms of evacuation, there is a hierarchy that has been established where we kick in what is required at different stages. If you were to see ODPM alone managing a press conference, we're real bad, because that is the Office of Disaster Preparedness taking control of the situation. Where we are right now means that we're more serious about just relying upon resources that will not necessarily speak publicly, and that would be local government issues from mayor to mayor or councillor to councillor, or WASA speaking for itself, etc. So we have an interministerial structure here before you. You know that this wasn't a part of the national landscape. It's Prime Minister Rowley's direction that we do these things. It is his vision that we've put this together with, right, to directly communicate and to present ourselves to answer the direct questions. There are evacuation plans at the big level, at ODPM, at the other levels. They also move into effect. So Minister Hines has told you that we have reconnaissance exercises, the engineering battalion, we have fire services, we have Coast Guard, we have CERT officers, we have disaster management units. They're all about. So we do have those positions. You mentioned the word predictability. I want to remind you, with climate change, which is very real and which is not an excuse, but which is a reality, the use of predictive modeling based upon past events is out the door, because we are experiencing orange level 5 days in a row. Last night, we've triggered ourselves into unit to say, well, let's think if we shift red. We don't know until the event happens. Remember Tropical Storm Brett. Remember the event I-95 that we had put up on positions. We have to prepare and anticipate. I saw a lot of commentary on social media. I'd like to tell my brothers on the Presentation College chat, I read everything. One set a level buffing. Why the government closed schools today? Look at them. Why they're too wicked. Had we not closed schools and we didn't get Lady Young open, Minister Sinanan pushed to get Lady Young open overnight. At 5 a.m. it was reopened. But if it didn't reopen, and the other 55 schools that Minister Dr. Dolly was paying attention to which schools cannot open, we had to weigh all the information on the shelf. When you get 10-second pecan commentary running around to say this one playing the fool and that one playing the fool and all of them stupid, it interferes with the reality of how you plan. So we in public life, we have to accept that this is what we're in for. We welcome views and criticisms. The balancing act is never an easy one, but I want to assure you, Jewel, that there are multiple plans for different situations, but that predictive modeling based upon past occurrences becomes difficult because we're in different circumstances. So what we have to do now, which Minister Sinanan, which Minister Gonzalez, which the Prime Minister, which I am engaged in, and which the Minister of Finance is also engaging because he has to pay for it. We're in now, well, what is the predictive modeling go forward in worst case scenarios? I'll end by saying, remember, the 1 in 100 year events, the 50-year events, the 10-year events, and therefore it can be explosive.
And if I could just add to what the Minister said, I mean, it's easy for someone to say, don't do this and don't do that. At 5:30 this morning, I was on a call to take a decision to close license office because license office didn't flood, but it was almost impossible to get to license office. So we have to take into consideration the school may not have been flooded, but students travel all around Trinidad to get to schools in different areas. And right now as we speak, I have in front of me here for approval from the PS, where the PS is looking at almost 30 areas where we have breaches on the road network. Why do we want to put students through that? And they can be on their way to school and we have a culvert failure. We have several culvert failures around Trinidad and we're keeping the road passable, but we have to go and do some emergency work within the next day or two. The decision yesterday, in my opinion, was a very sensible decision because there are people from Mayaro, there are people from South, Central, all over that goes to school in Port of Spain. They cannot access some routes to even get out of their homes right now. So why do we want to force children back into school today when we are still assessing the situation? As a government, there are many more things that we have to take into consideration before we make a decision. It is not as easy as some people may say, no, rain not falling in my area, so we shouldn't close school in my area, because people travel from different areas to come to your area for school. Thank you.
Yeah, just very quickly to respond to the question about amphibious vehicles. The Trinidad and Tobago Regiment and the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service both have high water vehicles that could traverse in those circumstances. And of course, the ODPM, as the monitoring and coordinating agency, is also possessed of 2 high water Wrangler Jeep vehicles, specifically with this in mind. Thank you.
Concerning the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, I'm also pleased to inform the national community that with the support of the Ministry of Finance, over the last 2 years, we were able to acquire an amphibious vehicle to assist TNTEC's response, especially when we have weather situations like this. In 2 weeks' time, that particular amphibious vehicle will be fully commissioned. Staff members of TNTEC have been trained, and the amphibious vehicle to assist and to boost TNTEC's response in emergency conditions like we are experiencing at this point in time. That amphibious vehicle will be fully commissioned, and it will join the assets that TNTEC has at its disposal to be able to increase its response capacity in extreme weather conditions. In addition to that, TNTEC has 2 special outfitted flood response vehicles, and those vehicles have been deployed as well and would have assisted TNTEC over the last couple of days in its response to some of the areas that were impacted by the adverse weather conditions.
Just a quick rejoinder. Apologies, I missed the answer. We too at local government and in our disaster management units, we also have amphibious vehicles. They are deployed already. So apologies that I missed that. Two quick things. We've confirmed, because there were reports going around about breaches of the Caroni River, breaches where the bank fails, as opposed to an overtopping, which is where there's just so much water in the river that it just spills over. So what we can confirm is that there's been overtopping. The last thing I'd like to say is just a story that Minister Gonzalez shared with us. And this is in saying thank you to every single one of the nameless, faceless public servants, contractors, and people that are involved in this exercise. We are reporting on what our people employed by Trinidad and Tobago are doing. Disaster management, TNTEC, WASA, all of local government, all councillors. Yes, we're on the field, but thousands of people are on the field. Minister Gonzalez told us the story yesterday of TNTEC workers who couldn't pass up the road because the road had failed, there was blocking, who took the pole out and walked it up the hill. Manual labor where other people wouldn't do it. So dedicated was the TNTEC staff that they walked the pole up the road. We saw that with the volunteers on the field helping everybody, the CERT officers who are all volunteers. There's so many people. I'd just like to say from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the government and on behalf of all of us at this table, a genuine and sincere thanks to so many people who have really turned up and done the job and continue to do the job. There's a lot to celebrate in this country, and it starts with acknowledging the effort of the people that do what they do. So big thanks from all of us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Simon, for allowing us to say that.
Yes, and since we are in the spirit of thanks, I want to say that the generosity and the goodwill of Prasad, the Food King, has extended from the Tunapuna Piako area to the Rio Caro Regional Corporation and as well to the Mayaro Regional Corporation. And I'm really proud of that. Yeah. Whole of society response. Thanks.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen who are with us, we thank you for joining us today. We thank all the members of the media who have again joined us to assist in getting the information out to the public, asking pertinent questions that have allowed us to answer and get that information out. I think if we have to have takeaways from today's briefing, I just want to leave us all with a message of caution. Please avoid flooded areas. Please avoid hillsides. Hills are still saturated and landslips are still a real possibility. I want to leave with a message of conservation, as Minister Gonzalez said. If you have potable water, please do all you can to conserve that water while our water treatment plants and WASA work to get everything back up and running, to get water back out to the citizens, and of course, Please continue to be your brother's keeper. We congratulate all members of private society who have joined with us to bring relief to the citizens. Please continue to look out for the aged, for the infirmed, for the very young. Continue to work in your communities while we all try to get ourselves through this trying time together. Thank you, and we will come back to the nation as is required. Thank you.
This is TTT. Live for local.